In this section, I'm going to talk about using loops inside of Ansible. So earlier we talked about how to do conditionals inside of Ansible playbooks using the when statement. Now we have the question of what if we need a looping construct inside of Ansible. So let me start here. Let me copy this playbook. Let me just move simple.yaml to simple.yaml._old. Move simple1.yaml to simple.yaml. Let me get something set up here. Now I'm going to remove a few items here to simplify this. Okay, so we have a playbook written in YAML. We're giving it a name. We're just executing it on localhost. We're going to be ultimately testing with items. Now, let's just go ahead and print out a simple string here. Hello world. Make sure we can execute our playbook. So I have some sort of syntax error in it. Let's see if we can figure out what our syntax error is. It seemed like it didn't like something with our Ansible hosts. Let's see what it's complaining about. Line 1, column 5. Oh, I know what it is. So I forgot to pass in the -i argument here. So without the -i argument, it doesn't understand that this is my inventory file. Then we see our execution of our playbook. Now, let's expand on this playbook and say we wanted to loop over something. And first, I'm just going to show you how we could do it, and then I'm going to explain what it means. So we could add this construct called withItems. And withItems is expecting some sort of list or list-like structure. And then let's say I added a bunch of IP addresses as list elements. So notice inside withItems, I now have a 5-item list with 5 different IP addresses. Now if I just execute this, what it's going to do is execute this task, but each time with a different value for withItems. Now, I'm not doing anything with each of the individual values, so in this case, it's just going to print out hello world 5 times. So now we see it's printed out hello world 5 times, once for each of the different values in that list. Now, I could expand upon this and say, I'm not going to print out hello world, but I'm going to print out the value of the list element each time through. So each time through the list, this withItems is going to execute like a for loop like structure. And each time through the for loop, it's going to create this variable item, and item is going to have this value corresponding to the loop element. So here I could use the value of item. First time through the loop, item's going to be 10.10.10.1. Second time through the loop, it's going to be 10.10.20.1. Third time through the loop, it's going to be 10.10.30.1, etc. until the end of the for loop. Now, unfortunately, we're going to run into a bug here with Ansible, and the bug is entirely a display bug. So it does in practice what I said, but there's some sort of bug, probably a race condition with the display, so it's actually going to display the second element first, but in execution, it'll actually execute this one first, this one second, this one third, this one fourth, this one fifth. But here we're going to actually see this one show up on the screen first and then this one second. And this is a known bug. There's ways you can verify that it is in fact executing them in the proper order and that it's just a display bug. And the Ansible core team has also responded that this is a display bug. They need to fix it. It is a bug, but it is executing it in the proper order with the with items. So we go ahead and execute this. And now we see that our message corresponds to the first list element, and here's the bug I was talking about. Here's the first list element, here's the second list element, here's the third list element, here's the fourth list element, here's the fifth list element. Now, if you wanted to think of this in terms of Python, if you're coming from having quite a bit of familiarity with Python, you could think of this as operating similar to the following Python for loop. So you could have 10.10.1, comma, 20.1, 30.1, 40.1, 50.1. We have this list in Python. And if you did the following in Python, this would be the equivalent of what Ansible is doing with its with underscore items. It's basically making this for loop. Each time through the for loop, this variable known as item is going to get stuffed with the value corresponding to that occurrence of the for loop. So the first time through the for loop, item is going to be this. The second time through the for loop, item is going to be this. The third time through the for loop, item is going to get this 10.10.30.1 value. Okay, so if we copy, just going to save this, copy simple.yaml into testwith.yaml. Here we have what we were looking at. Now, we could move this up to the vars section and make a variable here. Like say we make a variable called my underscore devices. Move the elements up there. So now we have a variable called my underscore devices. It is a 5-element list. And now, as opposed to directly calling directly putting the variable inside the with items, i.e. what we just had where all the list elements were underneath with items, we could just refer directly to the variable here. So we could just say my underscore devices and reference the variable there. This will behave the same way as what we just previously had seen. Execute this. And we observe the same thing that we previously saw. So this is how to do a with items structure. Now, you can couple with items and when together. So for example, we could do something like the following and add a when statement to it. In this case, it would completely skip the execution of the with items. And you could make a more complicated logic construct. So you could say when item equals and actually use the item in the conditional. So it didn't like my syntax there. Let's see if I can work out what I did wrong in my syntax. So there I corrected the syntax. So the syntax issue here is that the when statement is expecting Jinja 2. So I didn't need to enclose that in the dictionary, so the variable reference. So I could just directly refer to my variable and then what it needed to equal. And now if we go back and look at the execution, you see it executed when it was 10.10.10.1 and it skipped all of the other items. So the key point there is that you can couple both the with items and the when statement together in the same task of the playbook.